Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. I hope you're all keeping very safe and well. And yes, although I've just said the exact same words as what Ricky normally says, you can clearly see that it is not Ricky Bentancur in the hot seat tonight. For some unknown reason, I have got the hot seat tonight. I'm driving that crazy train even, and I've told you it'd be crazy already. And how good is it going to be tonight with the guest that we've got on? I'm absolutely delighted to have back all of the wonderful returning guests, and we'll come over to Jamie first and foremost. Jamie from the Daily Hotspur, how you getting on, bud?
I'm very good, thank you, Lee. And of course, finally this international break's over. From an England perspective, it's been a bit of a disaster. Obviously, relegation from the Nations League, and then, we had that crazy game against Germany, didn't we? But obviously delighted to have it out of the way. But then, we've obviously got the small matter of just the North London derby to come back to. So, looking forward to the weekend, but massive guest tonight. So, really excited for this show.
Absolutely buzzing, mate. Absolutely buzzing. And John, come around to you, one of our own, the man that runs the Lilywhite Rose as well, knows everything about the Tottenham youth. John, how you getting on, bud?
Yeah, Lee, great to be back on, mate. Pleasure to be on with this panel tonight. Really looking forward to it. Lots to discuss. From a Tottenham point of view, international break's been pretty good. No injuries. Goals for Richarlison, goals for Sonny. Kulusevski got an assist, goal for Harry. Perisic had that scare, but seems to be fine, fingers crossed. Looking forward to it. And most pleasingly, actually, with Eric Dyer's recall to the England squad. Really pleased for him. He deserves that. Been England's best central defender for the last 18 months, in my opinion. And it's been a long-awaited recall. So really pleased for him. And he seems to have nailed down his place on the plane. So, looking forward to getting into tonight.
No, absolutely. And of course, our Arsenal have got 8 or 9 players injured, haven't they, for Saturday, according to some reports. So that'd be an interesting situation at the weekend. Matty, come around to you, the wonderful Matty Hayes, running your amazing YouTube channel as you do every day and every week. How you getting on, Matty?
Yeah, I'm all good. Always a pleasure to be back on here. And I hate to bring down the mood, but if we're talking about international break, Matt Doherty was absolutely woeful for Ireland last night against Armenia. But we'll leave that, because if there's one thing I don't want to talk about, it's Irish football. So let's get into the Spurs business.
Well, that's good scouting report there, or not so good. It depends on which way you want to look at it. Might be Emerson coming back in. And of course, we have the main man with us. It is always a major pleasure to have this man on our show. I listen to him, I watch him, I read him all the time on Golden Guest, on the YouTube videos that he does, and a massive friend of the show. Alasdair Gold, you are back on Last One on Spurs. Welcome along. How are you getting on?
There I am. You can hear me now. Really looking forward to it. Always a pleasure to be on here. And like the guy said, just getting out of this international break. Thank goodness. It's a weird match to come straight back into after the international break, but there you go. And it's just a crazy time ahead with like a game every 3 to 4 days. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Recharge your batteries during the break, because this is it now. It's going to be mad for the next 6 weeks.
Absolutely. And of course, you have recharged as well, because for those of you, for most of you that follow Ali, and I'm sure you all do, he's just come back from Orlando. So and we've been chatting about that in the green room. So I was fortunate enough to go to Orlando in Easter. So we've just been sharing some Universal and Disney type memories, haven't we, Ali? We have indeed. Yes. Roller coasters and Tottenham Hotspur, it's all very kind of fitting, isn't it, really? Very similar. I like that at all. So look, before we get into the show, of course, we've got to talk about the one, the only Beavertown Brewery. Now, the Beavertown Brewery, we're absolutely delighted to be sponsored by Beavertown Brewery and the Beavertown Corner Pin, which is bang opposite the South Stand at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It is fantastic when we're home and fantastic when we're away. You can actually still get tickets to go and watch the big televised screenings of the football matches home and away down there. There is tickets there for the North London derby this week as well. And ultimately, it's all of the fun, all of the songs, some of the songs from Spurs song sheets, some of the songs you can see our very own John Lennon there in the crowd as well. So absolute brilliant shout out to our sponsors, Beavertown Corner Pin. And if you want to get tickets, you can go to www.beavertownbrewery.co.uk/pages/corner pin, and what you will find is some fantastic nights and afternoons over at the Corner Pin. Right, so fantastic. Great to welcome in sponsors to the show. We've actually got a live show going on there as well, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end of the show. But let's get into it, shall we? Ali, coming around to you first and foremost for sure. What we want to talk about really is I suppose, really a bit of a review of the window. Unlike Tottenham in previous years, they look like they've backed Conte early in the summer. We talked about 150 million that was allocated to the Spurs coaching staff and Perisic, and to go out and spend that money on them transfers. And as well reported by most people here, and obviously your good self, 7 summer signings coming into the football club. Can I just ask, Ali, what did you make of the Spurs' summer transfers? And do you think that ultimately we did enough?
Almost enough. I think it was a window like no other because it actually seemed to be planned out, which I don't think we can always say about Spurs transfer windows. It was strange in the fact that we had to get used to Spurs actually having a lot of players through the door before pre-season had really got going as well. I mean, by that third match, I think they had everyone in, barring Udogie, didn't they? I think pretty much everyone was in place, which is unheard of. But then it kind of psychologically almost had an effect, I think, on the end of the window, that we're so used to having late signings that kind of almost it felt like quite a disappointing end to the transfer window, which was really weird. It kind of totally changed the emotions. And I said this, I think, before in something that I do wonder whether had, let's say, Richarlison and Basuma, 2 fantastic signings, been signed at the end of the window, would we have all seen it as a great window? What a terrific end to the window. It's really weird. The whole psychology of it all was totally changed. I still think they could have done a little bit more. Conte certainly looks like he feels that it could have been a little bit more done. But ultimately, I think it was a positive step forward. That's a big thing, I think, for Spurs. I think every signing, even the one that Antonio Conte is desperate to hide in a corner until a later date, I think they're all really good for the team. And I think they all will push on the team in different ways. And I think the big thing about this window, it's been one about improving his options and the squad and getting all of our mentalities into this idea of not having an 11 and having a squad. It's been so. I still see people sometimes on Twitter saying, yeah, but, we went out and signed squad players. Yeah, that's the point. They're all squad players. That's kind of the idea now. But yeah, a little bit more. Would have liked to see a tiny bit more, maybe another attacking player towards the end. I think poor old Brian Hill was desperate to go anywhere and play football. And I think the fact that the poor kid he's just sitting there now on a bench, probably going to play a handful of minutes before the World Cup and the next window, barring any kind of injury crisis. I think, that's where surely someone else could have come in and let him go out. But other than that, I'd say it was an above average window. I think it was quite a good window. But yeah, just a weird one.
It's weird, actually, just before going over to the other guys, you mentioned one of your videos and one of your press conferences, actually, that Conte actually mentioned Brian Hill. So he's aware that he is playing for us, right? He is aware that he is a player that he can pick.
Yeah, I mean, the weird that he's picking him on the bench as well. It's just almost like he's a cardboard cutout, though. He's never going to come on. He's just there for that place on the bench. But yeah, it's one of those with Conte. I do wonder whether there's a couple of players in there just maybe need a chance, and if they get a chance, they might kind of prove otherwise.
For sure.
Moving on to the departures over the summer. Now, we started with Bergwijn going that long, protracted move to Ajax, around 30 million. Carter Vickers finally went 6 million, rising to 10. End of Galini's loan. We saw a whole host of players go out on loan where we couldn't, unfortunately, attract permanent departures for them. Reguilon, Rodon, Ndombele, Lo Celso. What did you make of the departures as a whole? And do you think Tottenham could have done more, maybe, to get some of these players out on a permanent basis? Or do you just think money wasn't available this summer in some leagues?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think there's an element of each of your kind of points there. I do think, yeah, definitely outside the Premier League, every other league has pretty much been moaning about the money the Premier League has spent because they just don't have it right now. I do think Spurs have always kind of had this issue with whether they're, funny enough, something that we used to mock, the wages. I do think compared to other leagues, the Premier League's and Tottenham's wages for a lot of these players are high, and that's difficult to then shift them on a permanent move because no club really wants to pay that sort of money that the players are used to getting, and a lot of them have still got long contracts left as well. I think that plays its part. Funny enough, first when Fabio Paratici came, I remember being told by a few people in Italy that one of his hallmarks at Juventus, alongside all the success, was maybe struggling to get players out of the door as well, which is quite interesting that this window, I think, is again kind of proved. Yeah, I'm not going to pin it all on him because I do think the other factors have come into play as well. But yeah, departures is a mixed bag. Like Steven Bergwijn, I won't lie, I'm gutted that he's gone. I really think he's going to be some player, and I think I wouldn't be shocked if he's back in the Premier League one day, and kind of shows Spurs what they missed. There's a part of me that I know obviously it comes down to money and stuff like that and him wanting to play, but on a personal level, putting all of his feelings aside, which I know isn't the right way to do it, I'd have probably rather had him on the bench and let Bryan Hill go off on loan and develop, because I think Bergwijn can come into Premier League games and have an impact. Well, we've seen it, especially at the King Power Stadium and stuff like that. So yeah, with him, I think Cameron Carter-Vickers obviously it was the right time, but let's be honest, he's made a home for himself at Celtic, and I think financially that could end up being a decent deal for a player, obviously, that's come up through the ranks as well. And then the four kind of who headed off on loan, and maybe Spurs will. I do wonder whether, had you even got one of those as a permanent deal, whether we would have seen another transfer or not. I'm not saying that the money was dependent on that or anything like that, but I just wonder whether it would have pushed Spurs into bringing someone else in. But just the fact that all of them were loan moves, and with no guarantee that any of them is going to end up at the club they've gone to either permanently. It's an interesting one. There's some big players. It's such a climb down when you think the two most expensive players in Tottenham's history before Richarlison, they've just headed out on loan for a second time in 6 months. It's such a failing of the club, really, and the whole transfer system they've had kind of coming up to that, I guess.
Yeah, so obviously at the start of the show, you mentioned about how obviously a mixed kind of reaction to the transfer window in terms of incomings. Me personally, I was really, really pleased with kind of the business we've done. Obviously bringing in 7 players, I thought some 7 great additions. And I think Paratici's done a great job. I mean, you consider the names that he's brought in those 3 transfer windows. I think it's been a brilliant job. But I think from the summer window, without doubt, one pick for me was my favourite signing, and that's Ivan Perisic. Obviously come in and done an amazing job already. A guy who's already worked with Antonio Conte previously. Obviously did a fantastic job at Inter Milan. Are you kind of surprised by how quickly he's coming and adapted to the Premier League? Is that kind of, or is that no real surprise to you?
I think we kind of expected him to be quite quick at it. I mean, he's been a very adaptable guy in his career so far. Obviously, he's played in various leagues now, and he obviously went to Germany and immediately pretty much adapted there, which you'd probably say is maybe the closest league to the Premier League in terms of physicality and pace and stuff like that. I think he's been fantastic on every level, not even just on the pitch, off the pitch as well. We spoke to Ryan Sessegnon and Jed Spence out on the various kind of summer tours. And both of them spoke about how Perisic had chatted with them and spoken with them about things. I even looked at an image the other day. I was writing some story about Yves Bissouma, and I noticed that in the image collection of one of the games, I feel like it was the Leicester one, you can see Perisic taking him off the pitch and chatting to him with his arm round him the whole time. It's what he is. He's almost like a player coach, it kind of feels like. He's mentoring these guys. Sessegnon said he's learned so much from him already. Jed Spence, he'd spoken to him when he'd come off the pitch, and the friendly just told him, like, you're going to get your chance. Don't worry. You just got to work towards it and you'll get it. And just having someone that's, won the Champions League, won the Serie A, he's won the Bundesliga with 2 different clubs as well. This guy has won so much.
World Cup final, hasn't he? So
exactly. He's been there, done it, and bought about 20 T-shirts as well. He's so good. And I think that's the thing as well. Quality-wise, 33 years old, and Conte says he's probably still the best in that position in the world, he thinks. And just, he's only just got started, which is the most exciting thing. He's only he is adapted quickly, but I still feel there's more to come. I feel defensively, he's got to kind of, we saw some elements of that in the Leicester game as well, flying wingers. That's something he's going to have to get used to as well in this league. And I think he will only get better and better. And I think you'll see his mentality and the mentoring rub off on a lot of those other players. And it's having that winner in the camp. I think he's going to be huge for Spurs. And for a free, it's no shock he was the first one they brought in, honestly. They targeted him. They knew exactly what he would bring, and he's bringing it so far.
It's interesting, just quickly on before we come over to you, Matty, on Perisic, because he did an interview, didn't he? And he talked about, I was willing Tottenham to get into the top 4, and it was almost like, oh, actually, you kind of knew you were coming. Then it was like that sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely adore that interview. You can see how much he was. Before we were in the Champions League, he wanted that move. And look, in the midst of this weird transfer window, I think Perisic was one of the moves that got the kind of most approval from within the Tottenham fan base. But from outside and from other clubs looking in, a move that a lot of Premier League clubs are very jealous of in typical Perisic fashion was when we signed Yves Bissouma for the most part under the radar until a couple of days before that was announced, and a deal potentially worth up to £35 million. I think a lot of us thought that he would be going straight into that team, but he hasn't quite got that chance in the first team yet. Had a few cameos, and a big one for him was when he came on in that second half against Leicester, switched to the 3-5-2, and we could see just how much more Tottenham had to offer in that different formation, but also with him on the pitch. Do you think he's earned that chance in the starting 11, or is there still a bit of work for him to do?
He's getting there. I think that was an important kind of performance against Leicester. He looked really disciplined. It was perfectly timed because Conte told us just like a couple of days before about how he needs to work on the defensive aspect. And I actually felt defensively he was superb against Leicester. I remember him making one really good challenge on the edge of the box. He made another one that obviously started the run for the last goal as well. That was a big thing for him, I think, to prove a point to Conte. I don't think he's been helped by his international break. Of everyone, he's had a bit of a mare with his international break. I think he played about 20 minutes from the bench in his first game against. They had a double header against Zambia, and I think the second game, and he played 15 minutes. He was in the starting lineup. The rain came down. The game was called off. He's had a mare in terms of getting minutes under his belt, which I think he really needed this week or last fortnight. But I think he's going to be fantastic. The fact that Spurs got him for, I think it was only about 25 kind of first off, and then there's other payments that can take it up. They got him for that. He's a player that's worth double that. He's been one of the best Premier League midfielders of recent years, I'd say. I think I'm shocked, to be honest, that there wasn't more competition for him. I honestly think he could walk into probably most midfields. He's that good. And I must admit, I like the fact that Conte's just said, yeah, but you're still not what I want yet. I like that. That just shows essentially what a big manager he is. He said, you go away and you work on that. I'm going to bring you in gradually. After the international break, I'm going to use you more and more because we're going to need you. It's every other game pretty much is probably going to start. And I like that because, despite what social media will have you think sometimes, Bentancur and Højbjerg are superb. They're a really good partnership. They really are. They are a top 4 partnership because Spurs got into top 4 with that partnership. It's not rocket science. It's there on paper. So to kind of suddenly decide that they're these kind of, hoofing players, whacking the ball around, don't know what they're doing, it's not true. They are a very, very good top midfield partnership. And you're going to introduce Bissouma into that. When he's ready, and I'd imagine he'll be ready pretty quickly as well. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a midfield 3 sooner rather than later as well. And then you've got Skippy as well. Honestly, that 4, I think, is a superb quartet of midfielders. Yes, there's no attacking midfielders among them, but I do think Conte is trying to tease that out of all of them. Højbjerg, attacking-wise, I'd say is getting better and better and better. He's contributing assists and goals as well. Bentancur has now scored his first goal as well. Who knows what that leads to? And I think they'll all start chipping in as well. So, yeah, Bissouma, I think, will be a big signing for Spurs. Whoever remembers the starts anyway. I was writing a piece on Gareth Bale yesterday. Remember Gareth Bale at the start? It's just like, Who cares now? It really is. So yeah,
was Gareth Bale, just quickly on Gareth Bale, was it like 20 games or something? Didn't he go
like 24? I think something like that. Yeah.
He didn't win a game, did he? For 20, 24 games, craziness, absolutely crazy.
I'm in there. There's also a bit of a misconception around that because actually his first 3 games, he scored a free kick against Arsenal at home. He scored away at Fulham, a great goal. He broke forward from left back and put it under the keeper. And then he had a little injury, and that kind of stunted his spell a little bit. He actually started phenomenally, but he gets remembered as this awful start because he had this jinx over him or whatever. And then Harry waited till we were 4 or 5 up against Burnley at home and whacked him on the 89th minute to end the hoodoo. But he actually started really, really well. And who knows what could have come from him even earlier had he continued that run. It's just interesting, isn't it? You know, different opportunities close and open to people.
Absolutely. That's football, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. I was just going to ask a question because obviously mentioned Basuma. Do you think there's any chance that we might see 3-5-2 at the Emirates, or is that kind of something that's too early on with Basuma? Because I know a lot of fans have kind of been calling for that after the performance against Leicester, and I just look at that Arsenal midfield, and obviously people will be saying, "Oh, don't say that," but I have a feeling that we could get overrun in that midfield. I'm not doubting the quality of Bentancur and Højbjerg. I just worry at times that they do get a bit overrun in that middle of the park. So, do you think Conte might look to put an extra body in there?
Personally, I want to see it. I do, and I'd even go as far to say I want Kulusevski as the right wing back because I think with the midfield 3, you've got a little bit more cover for a more attacking kind of wing back. I don't know about Conte. I'm sure we'll kind of prod him tomorrow at the press conference and try and see. I don't think he'll give us anything because he probably won't want to. But he's said so much about the 3-4-3 suiting Spurs better for him. But every time they've had a game against a team with a midfield 3, they've struggled to keep the ball and they've been dominated at times. I remember it was Bruno Lage, I think, after a Wolves game, came out and said, we knew if we had 3 in midfield, we'd dominate the game and all that. It was like they know that they can do that. It's a tough one because I think he'll look at both games and he'll probably... Obviously, he wasn't there for the Nuno debacle at the Emirates last season, which was just one of the most horrific first halves of football I've seen a Tottenham Hotspur team play. But he would have seen them get absolutely... I was trying to think who was in midfield that day. Actually, did we go? Did they go 3? Maybe they did go 3.
It was and
Ndombele and Højbjerg. So Dele and Ndombele just stopped running after about 15 minutes, completely down tools, both of them. And Højbjerg was left on his own, exposed 3-on-1. Absolutely unacceptable. And Skip was voluntarily left on the bench by Nuno.
And Romero as well.
Romero was on the bench. But look, the Nuno days have gone. Let's sort of back up to where we are. But Basuma is brilliant. Before I come to my next question, I just want to know. I know we will go on to the Arsenal preview, but I just want to give Chris a shout out here. He says, "Hello guys, is Luis going to play on Saturday?" So, Ali, have you got any heads up on that at all? Do we know if he's still got that knock? Is he still carrying that knock?
We don't know yet. We're finding that out tomorrow. The only things I would say is obviously France kind of explained it as a small thigh injury, which you'd hope means something. And the fact that it's Lloris and the club captain, and I know he's played through injuries and stuff before. I would imagine that he would likely strap himself up. If that was okay and it wasn't going to cause any more problems, I'm sure he would strap himself up and get out there. But we've got to wait to see what Conte says tomorrow. Unsurprisingly, Spurs have been very quiet on it because they don't want to give Arsenal any kind of heads up. They want to keep this kind of mystery around it, no doubt. But I think Conte will have to say either way pretty much tomorrow.
Yeah.
Cue him, no doubt. He'll probably come out and say, it'll be a decision I make on the day just to keep things interesting. But yeah, you'd think Lloris would not want to miss that game.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, we had that Fraser Forster masterclass, didn't we? And that also a game that pretty much got into the Champions League for Southampton last year. Some lots of good saves. So maybe we might have good hands if Lloris.
I agree. Let's just come over to some listening questions. And I want to start off with one that we got on the screen as well from Grant. He talks about the 150 million war chest. You're never going to get away from that, Ali. But, was that just writing off the non-existent transfers for Ndombele or Lo Celso, etc.? Or, did that actually go towards some of the other the transfers. We've also got a similar question in from Ben Hodson or from Twitter. Ben88 at Spurs asks, is that war chest now empty? Also, just talking about the 3-5-2 option, Dustin D at Debo 1980 also said, will Conte move to a 3-5-2 formation with Decky on the right-hand side, which we've just talked about? So what's your view, Ali, on the war chest? Now, I've got to be honest with you, there's about 40 questions in here, all talking about the January transfer window as well. We're going to spend, have we got any money left? So what's your kind of viewpoint on that subject, really?
Do you know what? Was it the last time I was on that we were talking about the war chest and all that? I was feeling it was.
I love
it.
You know
what? It's just like, the word war chest. I got so excited. I just wanted to use it. It's like, we've got some money to spend. And it's like, I've got to use that. And now it's absolutely become this stick to kind of beat the transfer window with. And the weird thing is, I was looking back because I did something on it a few weeks back. And all in, if you're including all the stuff that obviously Spurs will have to pay for these players, spent about 120 to 130 million. That's what it is. It's like, it's not far off the 150. And obviously, and that's not including Romero. You know, I don't know. Some people may include that. I don't want to, because I think it's a little bit of a cop-out, because obviously it's something from last year. But financially, I don't know how that works. Maybe it is included in part of that. Obviously, you shove that in there and you're talking 160, 170. But yeah, like I said earlier, I think more could have been done. I do think they kind of hampered themselves a bit with the loan signings. I do think that would have bolstered it that little bit more as well. And as for January, I think they have to, because like I said earlier, like, poor Brian Hill, he's not going to sit there for the whole season on that bench, just kind of, I don't know, doodling on a piece of paper or whatever it is they give him to do on there. He's going to want to go in January if he's not playing. He's want to get football. And the moment he goes, Conte says, okay, that's fine. I want him replaced. So someone comes in that position. I wonder if Jaffet will be similar. I think Jaffet will probably want, Jaffet Saganga will want football in January as well. Another one they need to replace. So I think just by the nature of it, the January transfer window has to have transfers in it. And then on top of that, you've got this stupidly timed World Cup. Who knows who's going to get injured in that as well? This is why they've tried to build, all the clubs have built these bigger squads to be able to handle that. But, you know, heaven forbid, you know, a big player gets injured, you're going to have to go into the market. You've got no choice, especially, let's say Spurs are having a hopefully flying, and they've got to keep that momentum going. They can't maybe wait 2-3 months or something for a long-term injury to come back. They're going to have to go out there. So I think certainly in terms of the whole Premier League, I'd imagine this will probably be the busiest January transfer window maybe ever. And Spurs will be playing their part in that. I think they have to. And Conte has made a point of saying it's a multi-transfer window thing. They've got to keep improving in every window. And I think he means January windows as well.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, go on.
Just to add to that point about the World Cup, and I know some people will definitely disagree with this, but if ever there's a transfer window where I'd be happy for Spurs to leave 40 or 50 million pounds in their back pocket in case it was needed, it is this one because of that World Cup. I mean, we all wanted an extra player in the attack. A lot of people wanted an attacking midfielder. You know, let's just imagine we had gone and done that. Let's say we brought in an attacking midfielder, and then we get to the World Cup and Christian Romero picks up a really bad injury for Argentina. We would then be thinking if we didn't get that, we could replace Romero, even if it's just a temporary thing in the transfer window. So I think the January window is going to be absolutely crucial to everything that happens here. And I think we are kind of seeing that in some squad selections as well. So if there is still another £50 million to be drawn down, I think it's going on a very good cause.
And I think as well, a lot of people definitely want that whole £150 million to be spent. But I think the most important thing is you don't just go and get some random alternative attacking midfielder. You go and get the player you want, because perfect example of that is Richarlison. He's come into the team and had he's our first choice target, and he's been absolutely superb. An example of maybe where, Spurs have gone for an alternative and it hasn't really worked out was Joe Rodon. Obviously, going after Milan Skriniar, obviously he was a much more expensive option, and he went for Joe Rodon and he just wasn't fancied by the manager. So I think as well, in terms of absolutely wanting that whole £150 million to be spent, I think the big thing is just making sure you're getting in the number one targets. And if you can't, then maybe wait for another window, because we've waited a long time for Richarlison to come along, but we've now got that money to be able to go and spend on a player like Richarlison. And yeah, I just think that's the most important thing, waiting for those top targets. And could have said, and Richarlison's a great example of that.
He is.
Yeah, to be honest, I was going to say on that point, because it's a great point, is Bastoni is a terrific kind of example of that. They wanted Bastoni to come in, and he would have been big money. Obviously, they've gone for Longley as the short-term option. Hopefully he ends up being fantastic and earns a permanent deal. But that's clearly an example of, okay, well, we had 50, 60 million pounds, whatever it would have cost to get Bastoni. That is now, I'm sure they're going to look at that again in the summer. I'm sure they'll have a little look in January, but you'd imagine probably not going to be a move mid-season that's going to happen. But yeah, that money now goes to the summer, and Bastoni becomes I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but in that world, in that scenario, he would become then the big money signing for next window, or one of them. But I don't imagine that had Bastoni come in, let's say, they wouldn't have got Richarlison or Basuma and all that. That very much, they seem to be very much planned deals. So yeah, you're spot on. I think it is a case of, I know we're desperate for transfers as journalists, fans, whatever, all of us are. But I think if you can't get the person you want at this moment, don't just sign any old person to go in that place. It doesn't really make any sense, especially for someone like Conte, because, well, we know what he's like. If he gets a player that he doesn't particularly want, they're not going to play.
Well, but both of you, you both mentioned players that I wanted to talk about. The Bastoni, I literally was banging the Bastoni drum so hard in the summer. And I have to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed. I also think that we were too short. And the two that I think that we were short was a Bastoni, a proper statement, left-sided centre-back, although I agree with Longley's done well so far, but I think he can move in as cover for Eric Dyer in the centre. But obviously, Richarlison, we started talking about Richarlison, and he was our statement signing of the summer. Signed from Everton for 60 million quid. The Brazilian became a fantastic signing for us. 25 years old, the Brazilian number 9. And he is really, really energetic. He's aggressive. He's on the front foot. And basically, Richarlison has shown exactly what he can do when Conte has called upon him. It's taken a little bit of time to get into that side. He hasn't scored a Premier League goal as yet, although, it was a tough offside call because I was there in the South Stand screaming at him when he scored in the Premier League, but obviously it's ruled offside. But then he's gone and got a couple of massive goals for us in that Marseille game. How impressed, Ali, have you been with him already this season in a Spurs shirt? Because I was a bit sceptical of him bringing. Personally, I wanted a pure number 9 to come into that, because Kane will play every week, and I know we chatted. I think myself, I put a comment with Charlie Eccleshare when he talked about the rotation is happening. Conte said it's going to be rotating. I'm thinking Kane's never going to be dropped unless it's a League Cup game. But we'll see how that pans out. But I have to say, I've been massively impressed with Richarlison. How have you been impressed with him, Ali?
Honestly, so impressed. So impressed. I think, because obviously all the talk was Rafinha or Richarlison. I've got, hands up. I thought Rafinha would be the one that I probably on just a talent level for me, I felt was going to be a good fit. But I actually think Richarlison, mentality-wise and everything, it's just been absolutely perfect. Conte adores him. Honestly, Conte loves him. And, you guys all know Guesty, that I do the podcast with, obviously a big Everton fan, and he's always raved about Richarlison, always. And I haven't always seen it. I don't see as much of Everton as he does, obviously. And I think he's one of those players when, from the outside, maybe you see the kind of the theatrics, the kind of other side to his game that, maybe other fans see. And what Guesty would always say is that within Everton, they loved him. He would give you everything, all of that stuff, any of the kind of histrionics on the pitch and stuff like that. That was purely in the pursuit of winning. That's all it was. It was never kind of any kind of flaw in his character or anything like that. He would never not give 100%. And I think we're seeing that. Honestly, the Spurs players, he's up there. He's one of the most popular players in that squad already. And in terms of his quality on the pitch, he's got a bit of everything, isn't he? He's a battler. He's got skill on the ball as well. I do think he's going to get a fair few Premier League goals this season as well. And I do think he is going to end up being that Kane replacement or rotation for when Kane needs a rest as well. He holds the ball up well. as well. I've noticed that he's kind of getting stronger on that, and he's absolutely on fire at the moment. Goals as well. His international break is on the on the pitch has been phenomenal. His performances as well. So I tell you, Saturday's game, that's some tough decisions in those attacking slots. I don't think obviously Sonny Boy is going to get dropped again, because why would you after that incredible hat trick? And he scored 2 as well on international duty, but.
Another free kick.
Charlison and Kulusevski, I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but that is going to be a decision to be made. Wow.
Definitely.
Just coming on to one of our signings, we touched on him briefly, and that's Clement Longley. Now, obviously, I was a little disappointed when the news sorted through that there was no option to buy him there. I think there were some reports that it was as low as 6 million or 6 million euros that we could have got him for, but for whatever reason, that fell through. And in the end, we've just got him on a basic loan, and we'll have to see how he performs and whether or not we offer a permanent deal in that basis. But what have you made of his start? And I think he gives us a real genuine alternative for Ben Davies, and a high level one at that.
Yeah, I think he's really good. He's very experienced. Kind of speaking to people about him before he came, I just kept being told about his left foot. He's got a great left foot. He can really, can pick out a great pass. I think we've seen that. It definitely is. They always call it an educated left foot, isn't it? I don't know why your left foot's always more educated than your right for some reason. And he's a really nice guy. I'm fortunate enough to speak to him out in pre-season, and because I knew that he'd turned down Spurs previous summer beforehand, and I put that in a couple of reports. And I asked him out there, and he was a little bit taken aback because I don't think that was out there maybe. And he just said it wasn't the right time. This is the right time. This is when I really feel like I can do something at Spurs, kind of thing. And he's very on his future. I got the impression, I asked him about that. I was like, because obviously there's no option. What happens? What happens if you have a great season? He said, honestly, no one's spoken about it yet. It hasn't been a subject we've broached. It's literally, if I have a great season, we'll all sit down. Of course, we'll talk about it. Because I suppose ultimately, it's a tough one, isn't it? You're a Barcelona player. I remember this with Emerson the previous summer. It's like, you want to succeed at Barcelona. Of course you do. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world. But if he's a big success in the Premier League, it gives him a decision to make. And Barcelona don't seem that keen, do they, to keep him and play him and stuff like that as well. So I'm hoping he becomes a big success, because he's a very intelligent guy, speaks excellent English, despite he kept apologising for it, which is always... my lack of foreign language skills is very apparent, and to have someone who speaks to you in almost perfect English apologising is just so ridiculous sounding. But no, very intelligent guy. I think he's taken on quite quickly what Conte wanted of him. I think weirdly missing out on that Korea tour, because he was there for he had a whole week of it almost, didn't they? They just worked him at Hotspur way. They got him ready physically, but I think they also would have been talking to him about tactical side of things as well behind the scenes as well. So he looks ready, and could be that he plays in the North London derby as well. That's going to be a hell of a game for him.
Can I just ask quickly, do you have any info on why there's no buy option in that deal for Longley? Because like you said there, Barcelona don't seem particularly keen to keep him, but from a Tottenham perspective, if he has a good season, of course we will want to keep him, but that price tag of 6 million could double, could triple if he does have the season we're all hoping he does.
I've got to be completely honest. We haven't been able to kind of ascertain whether that's from Spurs side, whether that's Barcelona. I guess, if you're Barcelona, maybe exactly what you say. Maybe it's not the right time to stick in an option, because in a year's time with Premier League experience, they could get a lot more from him. And obviously they are a club that we know have been having their financial issues as well. It's a really interesting one. I mean, the other element, this is purely speculation, but is it the Bastoni thing? Is that, do Spurs really have it in their mind that they're going to try and go again for him? Because, like Lee said, we were all banging the Bastoni drum. Unfortunately, just Bastoni wasn't banging the drum. He just didn't want to leave. He just had zero interest in leaving, really. He loves Conte. He wants to play for Conte again one day. But ultimately, he's kind of an Inter boy now, and he is properly kind of, I suppose he's so enamoured with that club. So, I wonder whether that's the thing with Longley. Are they thinking, well, we don't really want to trigger some kind of higher price where maybe we put that towards Bastoni? I don't know. It could end up being a mistake. Like you say, it could be could we have a great season and then they have to spend a bit more to get him next summer.
I think Bastoni had that little strop, didn't he, for Inter Milan? I think he was brought off on like the half-hour mark, and I think obviously a lot of Spurs fans kind of saw that. Maybe it might mean something, but yeah, we'll wait and see. Just a quick question. I think it might be the same case with Lloris. Ben Davies, I think he picked up a knock, didn't he? I think it was in the Sporting Lisbon game. Is there kind of any news on whether he might be back, or will it be the case that Longley does start?
It's going to be a tough one because he was 3 to 4 weeks was what I was told on him. It's like a little hairline fracture just on his leg, just underneath his knee, just below it. It's a tough one. Obviously, like I say, we Spurs are being very, very quiet. Everyone within the Spurs is trying to be quiet at the moment. I'd imagine it would be tough to kind of throw him back into that. Obviously, he is your experienced guy. He knows his fixture inside out. But unless he's been able to get any training days under his belt, it kind of feels like throwing someone a bit unprepared into it. Whereas Longley, obviously, no international duty. He'll have been able to prepare for this game all week. For me, I think it makes more sense for Longley to go in there, although it's a big game. I know he's played some big games, but this is a mad game at the Emirates as well, with players flying at him down the wings as well. So, yeah, I think... Personally, I'd be stunned if it isn't Longley, but again, Conte will tell us the latest tomorrow.
Jamie, before we come back round to you, I just want to go for a quick break for our listeners on audio. What we're actually going to do is we're going to be playing you the first part of the Yaya Toure Yves Bissouma interview that the club done recently via, I think, Spurs Play. If you haven't listened to it, you'll be listening to that shortly. And for our viewers on YouTube, which we've got nearly 500 of you live, so I can't be doing a bad show hosting in Ricky's absence tonight. A fantastic guest, Jamie and John, and Matty Hayes, of course, and obviously the wonderful Ellie Gold. But it is that time. It is that time of night where we have to go to NordVPN, the fantastic Nord itself. Now, obviously, you know this from Ricky already, but Nord is like the Harry Kane of VPNs, the Heung-min Son, the Romeros, playing front foot football of VPNs. And as you can see on your screen, over 5,800 servers worldwide. And if you're going abroad, you still get fast and secure connections. Maybe you're going to Frankfurt, iTrack Frankfurt next week, actually, and you still want to check in and get into your EastEnders fix. Well, then if you download Nord, you can actually do so. And you can get a discount as well, which is coming up on your screen shortly, by going to Nord's website. You can get 4 months for free if your discount code NordVPN plan plus 4 months free. It's completely free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So that is our time of Nord. Remember, the Harry Kanes of VPNs. So fantastic. Still loads and loads of you watching live. Jamie Brown, let's kick off the next part of the show. Over to you, buddy.
Yeah. So another of our signings, obviously, that came in this window, or in the summer even, was Jed Spence, signed for £12.5 million plus £7.5 million. That's according to Ricky. But yeah, obviously had a very, it's been a difficult start for him, really, hasn't it? Obviously, we've kind of really seen him make that appearance off the bench against Nottingham Forest. Only got 1 minute as well. He did feature for the England under-21s. I thought he was fairly impressive against Italy. So that was a good performance. The one thing that I'm kind of thinking, and I've heard some suggestions as well, is do you think there's a chance that Conte might be saving him for after the World Cup? And maybe that might be the case for the likes of Yves Bissouma as well, where these aren't players that are going to be featuring at the World Cup, and then he brings them into the team, and then they're kind of ready to hit the ground running. Do you think that might be the case, or do you genuinely think there is a case that Conte isn't too happy with Jed Spence?
I wouldn't say he's not too happy with him. I know that's probably, one extreme. The World Cup thing, I definitely don't think that's going to be the case with Bissouma. I think Bissouma's going to play quite a lot in these coming weeks. In terms of Jed, honestly, I was the one, it was my question out in Korea that he started to talk about Jed and said about the club buy. And the moment he said it, I was like, oh man, what have you just said? You absolutely hung the kid out to dry here. And it's to be fair to him, he did also say in the same sentence, but it kind of got lost, is that, but we believe he can become an important player kind of thing. He did say that. And like I said at the time, Conte doesn't green light something unless he feels that, okay, he will be a very good player. I think with Jed, he also understands that he's got to, because I spoke to him as well, he understands that he's got to be patient and it is a process for him. I'm sure he would have wanted to get more minutes, but I think the moment that we realised Emerson Royal was also sticking around and we kind of thought he was going to be heading off this summer, the moment there was going to be 3 right wing backs, it was always going to be quite difficult then, because Jed, it was going to be the one that was going to be the least trusted by Conte because he hasn't had his philosophy drilled into him, I guess, in one of the roles where it's probably the most important as well. And he is very young. I'd say 2 things that kind of got to happen for him, really. First off, he's just got to train hard, listen to absolutely everything Conte is telling him, take it on board. That's exactly what happened with Matt Doherty, funny enough, last season. He was kind of out of the picture and he just knuckled down and absolutely impressed Conte. Because the other thing I was told about Jed Spence is that everything about him was scouted and picked for Conte. As in, not because Conte requested it, but because they felt he was a wing-back that ticked every box for a Conte wing-back. Absolutely everyone. Perisic went and watched him a couple of times and said, yeah, he is definitely going to be that player. And I keep getting told this, that he's not the kind of player that Spurs would have probably signed as just a fullback for previous managers, because he very much is quite a wing-back specific player. They feel he fits it so well. So I just can't help but feel that the moment he gets a chance, he's going to show Conte that. And I think Conte is just very much kind of treating him like, yeah, you're a kid, you've got to work hard, one day you'll get your chance and all this sort of stuff. But then we've seen with the likes of Skippy and Sessegnon, exactly the same age, that it's not an age thing, because he does it. As long as you show him that you're reliable, he can trust you and you will listen to it. It's the tactical side of stuff. He is so insistent on his players going through these. It's almost like a machine. It's these repetitions of things they have to do, positions they have to be in, where they have to know where to pass to, where to stand when the ball's in a certain position. And I think for a young player like Jed, it's probably a hell of a lot to take on when you first come into a club. It's a big thing. So, yeah, give him a bit of time. And hopefully, the moment he gets a chance, because there's no way Emerson and Matt Doherty are going to stay injury-free all season. That would be like a freak season, really, if they manage that. And he'll get his chance. I wonder whether he gives him a chance against Forest in the Carabao Cup. For me, that would make the most sense. And then just, he can't really get the experience without getting the experience. It's a kind of a vicious circle. I think he's going to be brilliant for Spurs. I really do. I think he's such an exciting player. I was gutted, actually. He was left as an unused sub in the second England game against Germany because I think he needed more and more minutes. Yeah, honestly, watching him in that first game, he's got pace, he's got height, he's got skill. His defending's really good as well. He's got really good kind of instinct of anticipating when the ball's going to come as well. So there's so much there for Conte to work on. And I guess if he sees behind the scenes that he's coming on leaps and bounds, maybe he'll reward him with his chance.
I think as well, just on Conte, I think I was maybe a bit harsh as well in terms of Conte on Jed Spence. But I think sometimes for me, I kind of, a lot of what Conte says can kind of come across as being, a real disaster. Obviously, a lot of the time he comes out and says stuff and we all think he's going to leave. Do you think maybe it's kind of been the same case with Jed Spence, or do you think that maybe he's kind of saying something to really challenge Jed Spence? Because I think Conte kind of uses his press conferences. Maybe he doesn't believe everything he says, but he says stuff in a certain way to provoke a certain reaction. So do you think maybe his words are kind of to kind of provoke a certain response from Jed Spence? Because we saw how well he responded to Neil Warnock sending him out on loan, and obviously not speaking to kind of him proved him totally wrong. So do you think that might be the same case here? He's just trying to provoke a reaction?
It could be. It could be. Yeah, he does do that. You remember Christian Romero? Do you remember he said about him? He's just got to be more. He's got to take less risk when it comes to getting yellow cards, red cards, all that. Has Romero, I think, maybe got one yellow card since that point? That was months ago. It's obviously he says these things publicly just to draw attention to it, perhaps. I also think, like most managers, he likes to cover his back. Of course, he does, and he wants to make it clear that do you think I would have asked for this player from the Championship kind of thing and all this? It's like an esteem thing, an ego thing, I think, in a way as well. And then if Jed Spence, which we all hope and expect, I think, comes on leaps and bounds, then Conte can come out and claim, yes, I worked with him. Look at him. Look what I produced and all this. It's all it's what managers do. It's like the game they play. So yeah, I do think there's a message behind a lot of what they say. Conte, I would say, is probably the most emotional of all the managers I've had to deal with at Spurs. I do think there's more of an element of emotion in things he says. Certainly, like with Jose, everything seemed to have a little bit of an extra meaning to it. And Poch was like that as well. He likes to slip in little messages as well. But I'd say with Conte, when it comes to players, yeah, certainly with players, I think he's trying to get something into their heads as well. And yeah, hopefully it has a desired effect.
I think with Spence and Basuma. Oh yeah.
Sorry, mate. Just quickly, want to throw a listener question in because it's totally relevant to Jed Spence. It's actually from a friend of the show, Tim Winston. So I know he's watching tonight because he just put a comment up earlier. But he did put one of the listener questions in earlier, and he said, I can't find it now. Based on the current options of left wing back, right wing back at Spurs, who personally for you, Ali, would be your first choice? Like if you was to pick the best that we out there now.
That's so difficult because I won't lie, I was so excited when he went with Perisic and Sessegnon as a double because I felt that actually that could have been perfect. And then opening like 5 minutes, I was like, oh, this is working. They're absolutely flying. And then for one reason or another, I don't think Perisic really took to it down that right. Sessegnon wasn't fantastic, don't get me wrong, but I do feel that partly the swap was also about Perisic not quite. He got skinned a couple of times just for the goal, didn't he, down that side? And it just didn't work. And some Inter fans have told me as well that whenever he was on the right, he maybe wasn't as good. He got so used to playing on the left, maybe it wasn't his natural thing. So I would have said that before that game. I would have loved to have seen that. I think it has to be Perisic on the left, of course, because he's absolutely superb. It's one of those, isn't it? My heart tells me that Jed Spence will be the fantastic right wing back I think he's going to develop into, and I loved watching for Forest last season. It's so difficult because the others have all got these elements that I don't like as much. I think they've got really good elements, but also so Emerson Royale, I think defensively is maybe the strongest of the bunch, but I think going forward, as we say in the press box, corner's probably your best case scenario when he goes forward, or just pass it to Kulusevski or whoever's there. With Matt Doherty, I feel that he went on a real run of having terrific attacking performances, whereas I feel defensively sometimes he switches off. And this is my thing about Jed Spence. I kind of feel that he's got the potential to be best at both, because I think defensively he's a lot better than people give him credit for. And attacking-wise, there's still a lot to do with his attacking game, but I think he's probably the most dangerous out of the three. So, I could put a curveball and go Kulusevski anyway, because I want to see that in a 3-5-2. But for the sake of this, I'd like to see, I think the long-term, eventually this season, I'd like to see Perisic and Spence at some point.
Nice.
Although, next season you've got Udogie and Sessegnon will keep developing as well, I think, as well. A lot of options.
Perfect timing, Matty. Perfect timing.
Yeah, look, I just want to say in advance, I apologise if there's any background noise. I think in perfect poignant fashion with Tottenham 1 point off the top of the table. My sister is currently playing "Don't Stop Believing" on the piano, so I hope my mic's doing its job and you're not picking that up. You mentioned Destiny Udogie there, Alasdair, and he's a very, very exciting signing. And I don't know if the four of us knew much about him before Tottenham did go in and make a move there, but he's so highly rated in Italy. He's doing a fantastic breakthrough season last year for Udinese, carrying on that form into this season, and I think importantly getting involved at the right end of the pitch with goals and assists. Of course, with Conte and Pracci being Italian, they'll have maybe a vested interest in him and his development. Do you think there's a big onus now on Ryan Sessegnon to prove himself and to show that he is good enough to be that starting left back, or could Udogie potentially be a replacement for Perisic a year or two down the line?
Yeah, do you know what? I think it puts a bit of pressure on both of them. I do. I think for Sess, this is a big season because I think he has to show that, yeah, he should be there or thereabouts and pushing. And I think with Perisic, it's an age thing. It's kind of continually proving that he's not declining. And obviously, we're not seeing that decline at the moment. He's been very fortunate, fortunate or just looks after himself. I don't know. It's probably a mix of the both. That he hasn't had any major injuries. in his career. He's hopefully that's kind of means he's a younger player in all but his actual age. I think it pushes both of them, because I do think Perisic has to keep proving that he's worth kind of sticking around for that second year of his contract as well. I think he will be. But for Cesc, yeah, it's probably the most pressure's on him, which is difficult when you've got someone like Perisic there as well, who is probably going to get the bulk of the starts, you'd think. Although there's so many matches, he'll get a fair few. But he's going to be class. He really is. The more and more I see of him as well, even just watching the 45 minutes or so he had against England, just the composure for someone his age. Kind of keeps you having to remind yourself he's 19. It's a little bit like a defensive version of Kulusevski. And that Kulusevski, I keep forgetting he's 22. It's just incredible, honestly. He plays like someone so much older. And I think that's the thing with Udogie as well. Just the way he treats the ball, the way he looks after. I mean, his boss at Udinese was shocked that he wasn't in the Italy squad, the senior squad. He's like, he's one of the best left wing backs or left backs in Italy right now. He should be in that squad. And this is a 19-year-old kid, essentially. And I think Spurs have done a very clever deal here. I know we want to see players come the here and now, but I think having that extra season in Serie A, I think he's going to be, a bit like we're saying with Longley, I think he's going to be worth maybe 2-3 times what he was this summer by the end of this season, if not more. I think he is going to be one of the best players in Serie A and in the down the flank. So, yeah, it's just exciting. It's exciting. I love seeing these kind of deals as much as I do the Richarlison types. Seeing these kind of deals for the future because, big players. They really are. They're going to be.
Okay, cool. John, let's come over to you. Actually, I just wanted you to talk about Fraser Forster as well, if possible. So, John, you take that one?
Yeah. Obviously, we replaced Galini in the summer. We finally added a homegrown goalkeeper. And obviously, Brandon Austin has also finally come of age in terms of being able to qualify as homegrown. So we're now in a good position with 2 of the 3 slots. But I've seen also today links with Jan Oblak. Now, that would be a real statement signing from the club. That would be a signing that showed we were looking to find a successor to Hugo longer term. What did you make of those links and also Fraser Forster's arrival at the club?
Yeah, obviously Oblak's class. He is class. I think the club, of course, will be looking towards the future. It's an interesting one because they were looking towards the future last summer, and they felt that they had it in Galini. Nuno, from what I understand, Nuno and Paratici very much were of the feeling this guy is going to edge out Lloris this season. And of course, it was quite interesting to see Hugo Lloris get some competition, and if anything, he pushed on even more. It just kind of shows you what a top goalkeeper he is. And a bit like we were saying with Perisic there, it now becomes that point of how much he can continue to keep pushing himself, but also how much his age will eventually play a part. Goalkeepers obviously have that extra long shelf life as well, which helps them. And it's not like he's got another 18 months left on his contract as well, hasn't he? It's the end of next season, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, they'll have to start looking for stuff. For a replacement for the long term. I just wonder whether Lloris is going to be one of these. It's going to make it a little bit difficult. It's because, I don't know, you look at a big keeper to come in this coming summer, unless Lloris decides now's the time to go back to France, which is his plan for his latter years, I still think anyone coming in is going to struggle for game time next to Hugo Lloris. I do, even a big name signing, because I think Lloris probably gets the nod to start off the season, whatever, because of everything he's done before. And I think he probably keeps the shirt. So it's a little bit, not quite to the same degree, but maybe a little bit like the Harry Kane situation of trying to convince a big striker to come in when you've got Harry Kane. And I just wonder with Lloris at the moment, whether getting a big keeper who is playing week in, week out for their club and convincing them to come for next summer, it's going to be a tough one. I wonder whether they end up maybe going a little bit younger with someone that they can maybe kind of bring in as the heir for the following season on that promise.
Well, look, one player that we certainly or hopefully won't be looking to replace anytime soon is the Swedish maestro, Dejan Kulusevski. Fabrizio Romano reported today that Tottenham are definitely going to make that deal permanent. There's two options: an obligation to buy for a report at €35 million if he plays 20 Premier League games and we qualify for the Champions League. Otherwise, it's going to be a buy option, just an option for Tottenham, which I think is potentially a lesser price. Have you heard anything similar to those reports?
Well, we always kind of knew that there was these different ones, and the Sporting one, I think we all just presumed he'd meet the Sporting requirements, whatever, to be honest. I think it was all in the when Juventus announced the signing. I think a lot of it was kind of laid out there anyway. It's a no-brainer. It really is. Honestly, if there is an option to do it in a cheaper fashion, just get it done, because it's going to happen anyway. He's going to play 20 games, isn't he? He's going to do that quite quickly as well. Dejan Kulusevski is rapidly becoming one of the. He's honestly,
love him.
He's got it all. Oh, he's so good. This is why even Conte said when he was on the bench for those 3 games, it was like one of the most difficult decisions, and he actually broke his rule. He spoke to him. He normally doesn't explain his decisions to players, and he actually had to, because he came straight in the team and delivered like a pinpoint cross within like 30 minutes or so to Harry Kane at the back post. He's just so good. His goal stats, his goal involvement stats are ridiculous for his first 24 games. So like 16, 17 goal assists. It's just incredible in the Premier League. We definitely know that there's an option in there that if he meets, as they call it, sporting requirements, which he will. But yeah, I don't know if there is one that you can do it in a cheaper fashion. I'm sure Fabrizio knows if there is. Just get it done. Get it done quickly.
No, for sure. And actually, obviously we looked at the season-long loans of Sergio Reguilon and people going out, and we were linked with lots of different people, Carrasco and Ziyech, and all these different things that come into the end. We obviously also saw Tottenham extend or sign on a 5-year contract the amazing right-sided centre-back Romero as well. And actually, there's quite a lot of chat going on in the YouTube chat around Harry Kane, and is he going to stay and is he going to go, and that type of stuff. And I'll come over to Matty to talk about that in a bit. But interestingly, I think you put out one of your shorts this week, not your shorts that you were wearing in Orlando, probably, Ali, but one of the shorts on YouTube, and it talked about just qualifying out or clarifying some of the contract scenario around Conte, and just wanted to get your view on that, because there's been conflicting reports. I remember you talking about this months ago, and I said it on this show that actually it is up to Spurs, and I think you clarified that months and months ago, and you've just reclarified that. So you're understanding, Ali, now what is the contract situation with Conte?
So he has a contract which he signed when he joined, which comes with an extension option, which is totally weighted in Spurs' favour. So Spurs can extend that at any point they choose. The initial suggestions around the time were that it was potentially a 2-way option, which meant that Conte had to agree to it as well. But everything I've been told recently by a number of sources is that it's Tottenham's option. Pretty much similar to how they have with most players. It's that they can whack on a bit of extra time on that. It protects them against, if the likes, obviously Juventus were linked, which would have been an interesting one for them. I'm not entirely sure how they would have managed that, but it gives them a protection of extra time, extra contract, extra compensation. I mean, it's a good thing for Conte as well, unless he did desperately suddenly want to get out the door, because it gives him financial security for that little bit longer as well. And interestingly, someone said to me the other day, it's like, oh, but they can't just do that to him. They can't just suddenly extend his contract if he doesn't want to. It's like, well, no, that's what he agreed to at the start. That's exactly what he signed up for. He signed up for a contract that could be extended afterwards. That's what it is, and that's a good thing, because
good news.
You know what Tottenham are like. If he were to stamp his feet and want to go, they're going to say no. That's essentially it, really, for now. And look, he's happy and settled. Everything I'm hearing is kind of good stuff about him at the moment. That he's very settled at them, and he feels like they are trying to build a club around him, which maybe at previous clubs hasn't always been the case. I don't know. Whereas the Spurs, I don't want to say he's a big fish in a small pond, because that's not fair. Because Spurs are obviously have become such a bigger club again in recent years, in the last, since obviously Poch's time. But I do think at Spurs, they look at him as, I suppose, not quite a saviour figure, but someone that can lead them in the right direction, and someone that's been there and done it, and he's a winner. And they kind of trust what he says, and to have that as a manager must be quite a big thing.
Yeah, and you've got to think about that as well, haven't you, with regards to other players signing, with Conte being there. I've had it on very good authority, and I've banged this drum so many times on this show as well about Harry Kane signing a new contract. I'm still completely convinced that's going to happen. In fact, I know that is, but ultimately, I'm still convinced it's going to happen. I can't verify them sources, but ultimately, you would think that with Conte having that extension given to him, or knowing that he's going to be around for at least another season, that would also now start to pave the way for the likes of Harry Kane and others to either sign extensions of their contracts as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, every player wants stability, and if that stability involves someone like Antonio Conte in it, then it becomes such an easier decision. And on with Kane, we know he's happy to discuss the new contract. He's excited about where things are going at the moment. He's had a cracking start in terms of his goals. Was it 6 and 6 in the Premier League? Something like 6 and 7 maybe now. No, I think it's 6 and 6. And he's in a good place right now. And also, without sounding too kind of cynical, but I think his options outside of Spurs maybe aren't as great as potentially they were the previous summer. I keep hearing, obviously, the likes of Bayern Munich and stuff like that, which I still find really odd when Harry Kane himself came out quite clearly in an interview and said, I don't want to play abroad. It's like he couldn't have really made it any clearer. And we know he's going for Shearer's record. It's not like it's not any secret.
Exactly.
That doesn't involve suddenly deciding I'm heading off to the Bundesliga next summer. It's. I think it's now just it's in Spurs' hands, really, because I think Spurs had certainly last time I was kind of asking around was early in the international break, and what was that, last week? They hadn't made their move yet. So whether they have by now, I do think you just get in there, and it's going to be a big contract, and there's going to be a lot to it. It's not going to be something that's going to be agreed quickly, of course, but I do think you just tie him down. Let him break that record at Tottenham Hotspur, because he's an incredible player, and I still don't think he's actually hit his peak. I think he can still keep getting better. Strikers, I think he's almost there, but not quite yet. No brainer. Conte's there. Keep Kane as well, and Sonny obviously refiring again, and all these young players who are going to be big. Richarlison as well. Honestly, pretty exciting.
Wait to get onto the Arsenal. I can't wait to get onto the Arsenal preview, because we're going to absolutely batter them based on that attack. Of course we are. Just quickly, I just want to kind of get your view on, I suppose, on the season so far, and if I can, then we will go for our final break, and then we'll go into the Arsenal preview. But Tottenham have made a really strong start points-wise to this particular season. We're unbeaten in the Premier League at home since Brighton turned us over with a 92nd minute winner for 1-0. We're actually unbeaten in the Premier League away from home since March the 12th. We've got 17 points from the first 7 games, which is our joint best record at the Stages campaign, which was the campaign that we got our record points total under Pochettino, who ironically got beaten by Antonio Conte's Chelsea in that unbelievable run. I do find it really strange. There's lots of listener questions, and lots of people on the comments here as well talking about different formations, and we touched upon that before. This weekend, 6 years ago, Arsenal beat Chelsea 3-0, and it was that weekend that Antonio Conte changed his system to a back three, and then went on some ridiculous 15 straight wins in the Premier League to actually go and blow Mauricio Pochettino's Tottenham away. And I just wonder whether or not that's, in your opinion, not maybe going to happen again. But yes, Conte is 3-4-3. Yes, he's quite stubborn, if I can say that. He's never going to meet me, so he won't mind me saying that probably. But actually, he has been known to change. Do you think, Ali, that he may change to a 3-5-2 at the weekend and really start to really hammer home? I mean, 17 points after 7 games. It's a brilliant return, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's funny, isn't it, how we all we cling to these things, don't we? I love that. How we kind of look back in the past. He did that then, he's going to do it again. Yes, of course he is, because we want it to happen right now for this North London derby. He is stubborn to a certain degree, but he is also a guy that when he recognises something isn't working, he will change it. We've seen that as well. I don't know whether 20 minutes against Leicester, who are already behind, is going to be enough for him to decide he's going to change his whole formation. Personally, I hope it is. I don't know at this point. I mean, obviously in the home game against Arsenal, albeit later on with 10 men, it probably was quite comfortable with playing the 2 in the middle against him in that game. Obviously, away game's completely different. It's a difficult one. It is. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see the change to 3 at some point. It puts a lot of reliance on the wing backs and the front 2, of course, because those central 3 are not attacking players. They're not. So it's going to put a lot of kind of responsibility on those 4 around them shoulders to create. But it's just been such a weird start to the season because they haven't hit anywhere near their top gear, yet they're 1 point off the top, second top scorers in the Premier League. It's been on paper a fantastic start. But yeah, it's just something about it hasn't clicked. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's the sign of a big team, is that you can not be playing well but still picking up the points. I do think that's something to be said for that. But just the improvement under Conte. I remember looking the other day, I was looking at calendar league tables rather than the actual tables. Yes. And the 2021 table. Oh, it's incredible. 2021 table, there's something like it's about 30, 35 points behind Man City. And then the 2022 calendar table so far, they're 3 points, I think it is, behind City. That's just massive. Obviously, you've still got 3 months or so to play, but hopefully, well, not even that, is it? 6 weeks to play, pretty much. It's just incredible the improvement that's taken place. And yeah, I know what we're like as football fans, and we can kind of be up and down depending on the result. But I think to not see that there's progress happening there, it is there. It's there before our eyes, and the football will get better and better as the players gel and adapt, and all the new signings, they've started to adapt well, but they'll only get better. And I still do believe that the Conte system relies so strongly on the wing backs. And I think if you get those wing backs right, everything else clicks into place. And it's just down to him to figure out exactly who he wants in those wing back slots. Because the moment he does, I think it's going to be like a rocket, that team. It's just going to fly.
It's going to be amazing. We've seen glimpses of that last season, even, and of course, sometimes this season as well. Look, we're going to go for our final break of the show. For our listeners on audio, you are going to hear the second part of the Yaya Toure and Yves Bissouma interview. And for our watchers on YouTube, we've got 500 of you still watching live, still putting up with me hosting this mad, crazy train that we're going after. But obviously, with a wonderful guest that we've got, and included the superstar, the man himself, Alasdair Gold. Now let's get to it. I know the comments have been going mad for the Arsenal preview. Most of you lot in the comments as well have been going mad for it. So let's get to it. It seems like it's going to be a mouth-watering contest. It's very, very hard, isn't it, Ali, and viewers and listeners, to kind of get up for this and really look forward to it, because it's probably one of the worst fixtures that we have in the calendar. But Arsenal and Spurs making incredibly strong starts, as you just touched upon. Arsenal currently sits top of the table, following 6 wins and 1 defeat. We're 1 point behind them. If we beat them for the first time since 2010, we go top of the league. As well as taking out our North London rivals. Who, Ali, in your opinion, holds more advantage going into this game?
Purely because it's at the Emirates, probably Arsenal. It's just such an unpleasant match there. It always is. It's really uncomfortable to watch. Their fans are obviously always so up for it for this game, and it creates a completely different atmosphere that I don't know, maybe there is for other games they play at home. And it's just Spurs do seem to have a mental block there as well a lot of the time. I know there was a little run at one point where there were a few draws in there, but it just it just gives me shivers thinking back to the Nuno game last season. It really does. Just went through my mind again. So I'd say in this case, probably they've got the slight advantage, and obviously some of their key players not being on international duty probably would have helped them. Jesus, of course. I don't like the fact that it coming after the international break makes it even more unpredictable, because we don't know which players maybe have little knocks. They're carrying little things from their international games as well. It's a big game. It's not a season decider, but it's a big one for someone to make kind of a statement early on, because Arsenal had a lot of praise chucked at them, but I would actually say that in quite a few of their games they haven't been at their best either. And look, Spurs are 1 point behind them and are unbeaten. And obviously, if you're going to be tough on Arsenal, you could say that they got their first big test in United, and obviously they did lose that. And obviously Spurs fans will be hoping that their next big test, which is Spurs, is going to produce something similar. But yeah, it's going to be probably an unpleasant, uncomfortable game, as these always are at the Emirates, not least in the press box, because they have this thing right in the front of the press box, the back row, all stand up to the fans in front of the press box. So if you're in those front 1 or 2 rows in the press box, you're stuffed. You cannot see anything. Which maybe is a good thing, especially last season's one. But it's if Spurs can come away with something, it just puts such a marker on the season, and Conte then uses that to absolutely galvanise them for this run of 13 games in a row kind of thing. It would be huge. It really would.
I agree. May, over to you, mate.
We spoke a lot about Antonio Conte. Of course, I think if Tottenham are going to get something out of this, we're going to need a bit of a masterclass from Conte, and he's earned a reputation as a tactical genius in his time at Juventus, at Inter Milan, Chelsea, and of course with that Italian national team as well. Now, he often gets the criticism of being a defensive team, and you spoke about Tottenham's improvement in terms of how much they've closed that gap to Manchester City. But in this season so far, Tottenham are the second highest scorers in the league. In 2022 so far, we're the second highest scorers in the league behind Manchester City, which shouldn't even count as a normal team. But with the way he utilises counter-attack, and people always kind of talk about we're overperforming our XG, when last year was Kane and Son, but now Kulusevski's in that mix as well, and we're hoping Richarlison will kind of get involved there. What have you made of Antonio Conte's style in the league so far this season? Would you describe it as defensive, or would you describe it more as kind of playing to the strengths of the players at his disposal?
That's a difficult one. Yeah, I wouldn't say. I've seen people saying this about a defensive thing this season. I haven't seen as much of that. I do think it's just a case of the passing's been poor a lot of the time, and I think that stopped them kind of being the attacking side, because Conte's teams do score goals. It's not like his teams in the past are often teams that are like the lowest scorers or anything like that. I wouldn't say. I do think Spurs naturally, and this predates Conte as well, of course, they suit the counter-attacking style because of the pace in the team. And I think Kulusevski, although he's not the fastest, he actually really suits counter-attacking because of his strength on the ball and his dribbling. He can be up the pitch, before you know it, because of the strength. So I'd say, I wouldn't say they've had a defensive start to the season in that respect. I just think they've just kind of stuttered and stumbled a bit in trying to get the ball forward. And he hasn't been happy with the performances. It's not like, I think if he was coming off after each game and saying, they did what I asked, and we got the points, blah, blah, blah. But he hasn't. He keeps saying they can be better on the ball, they can do this better. So they're clearly not doing exactly what he wants on the pitch yet. Like you said, the counter-attacking style on paper lends itself to being perfectly suited to going to the Emirates and the way that Arsenal you'd think will come at them. But unfortunately, especially games at the Emirates don't seem to be played on paper, really annoyingly.
Into some of the early Arsenal team news, we've heard lots of reports that up to 5 or 6 could be missing. I personally don't believe that. In fact, they'll all play. But if they were to miss out, with Zinchenko and Partey potentially being rumoured, how big a blow do you think that would be for Arsenal, and who do you think may come in instead for them?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? It really is. Isn't this the same before every North London derby? I just feel like it's always the topic before of how many players Arsenal are going to be missing and then aren't. Yeah, I mean, of course it'd be a blow if they lose key players. I feel with Spurs, I think Conte needs to get Spurs, and I think he wants to, out of this mentality of worrying about who the opposition have got and who they line up with and who's there and there on this side of the pitch or that side of the pitch. I think Spurs have kind of got to be a side now where they're thinking, well, we're going to go there and we're going to win, and it's about what team we put out there. And I think, especially when you're facing a team that, you know, they mentally, are they there yet, Arsenal? You know, you could argue exactly the same with Spurs, but I think this is going to be the big test for the Arsenal team this season, is mentally how they deal with the consistency of stuff. And obviously, having seen what happened to them at the end of last season with their, you know, unfortunately titled All or Nothing series, which ended up being nothing, they really, it's, you know, I think they're the ones that there's probably going to be more pressure on Arsenal, I think, at the weekend than it is Tottenham. So I don't know whether who plays or not is going to be too much of a thing. I think they're going to be up for it, whatever. But yeah, it's tough. I think if we're talking about Gabriel Jesus, I think that's different because I think he has been a bit of a game changer for them this season. I think he was the kind of missing piece of their puzzle. Whereas elsewhere, I feel they can probably handle various absences, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just too cynical. I'm not even sure whether they'll end up being absences in the end anyway.
One man who'll be licking his lips at the thought of a kind of changed Arsenal backline is Son, who, as you mentioned earlier on with the hat-trick he scored against Leicester, you'd have to assume he's going to be one of the first names on that team sheet. Where do you think that leaves Richarlison and Kulusevski in terms of getting on this pitch?
Oh, honestly, what a decision! What a decision to make against one of the most informed players right now, Richarlison, in you know his recent games, and then you've got Kulusevski, who probably offers you more in a creative sense than Richarlison does as well, and especially in a game like this where, like you said, you know, the counter could be the thing as well, and I think Kulusevski on the counter probably gives you slightly more. You know, Sonny he's got to start. He has to. His record against Arsenal alone is superb. If it wasn't for the fact that he scored 5 goals in 3 games now, it's I'm trying to keep going back and forth into who I would pick. I think I would probably go Kulusevski purely because of that creative outlook, being able to cross those balls into Kane and Son as well. But it depends what formation as well. You know, like I say, if he does go.
Just to interact with you there, I just put it up on the screen here now. This is what last one's words. This is what we was chatting about in the green room. This is what we kind of think that Conte will pick, not that what we would pick. But this is quite interesting because I think that this is what we've discussed, and we think that's where Conte will go. And I know it's 2 different things. Do you think Conte will go with that, other than obviously we're talking about Kulusevski and coming as a right wing back, which I agree with you. I think we should go 3-5-2 and do that. Do you think that what's on the screen now, we've got the 3-4-3 with Royale on the right and Perisic on the left, and we're starting Son, Kane, and Kulusevski? Do you think that's what Conte will do? It's quite safe.
I think so. I think that's what he goes for, because I don't feel that after feeling so bad about leaving Kulusevski on the bench for 3 games, he immediately puts him back on there after the first game he came back. So I do feel that this is a formation he's probably going to go with. And, you know, like I said, Emerson does give you that more solid defensive base if he sits back that little bit, and Kulusevski can then raid up and down that right-hand side. Again, it all depends on who comes back in what condition as well. But if I was to guess right now, I'd say that's probably going to be the lineup.
Yeah. Conte's lineup, not ours. I mean, again, just to clarify, we would have, I mean, I agree with you, we'd have Kulusevski as a right wing back, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Now, one man who we all know absolutely loves this fixture, he's got 13 goals in 15 appearances in North London derby. It's, of course, the main man, Harry Kane. How important do you think it's going to, I mean, obviously he's going to be so important for us on the weekend, but just how important do you think it is that Harry Kane does show up and put in a big performance? We obviously saw, you know, I remember back to that big performance at Manchester City. How key is it that he really shows up on the weekend?
Oh, it's massive. It's his derby, isn't it? He absolutely seems to love this derby. And you know, the Arsenal fans just hate him being in the team against him and Son. Funny enough, they just. And you know, I know a few Arsenal fans, and they do all fear that either of those is going to get a goal on the day. And we know Sonny's in a good place now, which is fantastic. I do think we can't also underestimate that penalty for England as well. Just what a big moment that was for Kane as well. I just hope mentally that was a big thing for him just to go into this weekend with. The pressure on him was ridiculous going for that as well. Yeah, I think what we need from him as well is there's no doubting the goals this season. Like I say, 6 in the last 6 in the Premier League. But I do want to see a little bit more of the creative Harry Kane as well. I think in this kind of game especially, you're going to need him to pull back at times and let, if it is Kulusevski and Son, kind of bomb on past him. That's maybe been something missing from him at times. The little quality in those through balls that we know he can play. He still pings some wonderful ones. I mean, he could have had a couple of assists for Emerson against, was it Leicester? Yeah.
It's in Sporting, I think. Was it?
Oh, Sporting. Yeah. Yeah, could have had a couple against them. But yeah, I just think that's been slightly missing from his game in some of the performances. That little bit of passing quality. And yeah, big game from Harry Kane. Pretty much you're going to get a positive result.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I mean, when we talk about big game from Harry Kane, I think the one that epitomised in obviously recent times is that one at the Etihad. And if he plays like he did against Man City last season at the Etihad, I think we win the game. That's how good the guy is. I mean, I was listening to View from the Lane with Danny Kelly and Jack Pitt-Brook. Sorry, Jack, I've just murdered his name. But Jack Pitt-Brook even from the Athletic, and they were talking about even how good Harry Kane is in a 9 and in a 10. That actually people are just kind of going, do you know what? Let's stay behind 9, 8, 9 defensive, and then we can just go with him if he gets it right. But if he's on his game, in my opinion, I think we can beat anybody. Kane needs to take the North London derby by the scruff of the neck and run it. And if he runs the game, we've got a very good chance of winning. And I also think this is where I'm coming from with the 3-5-2. It almost seems to me when Son and Kane are slightly closer together, rather than kind of out, when they're slightly close together down the middle, Son can do even more damage because the defence don't know what to do with him. Whereas actually, if he's a little bit more out wide, they kind of can. You see where I'm coming from? Like, I don't know if I'm talking gibberish, but that for me feels like a bit more compact, but and also a better way to attack.
Yeah, I agree. I think Son and Kane as a partnership are one of the best around, and I do think they are. And when they kind of feed off each other, we know they are. They've got the record for assists for each other, you know, in the Premier League for players assisting each other. So, yeah, essentially yes, a big fat yes to that. Essentially, Harry Kane for me, that's probably the last step for him, isn't it? Is if he wants to be, I think he's world class, but I think if he wants to be considered in the greats of the game, I think it's the consistent ability to grab games by the scruff of the neck. And that's maybe just the last bit for me. We've seen him do it. Etihad is a perfect example. He was unplayable that day. That was one of the best performances I've seen by probably any Premier League striker. He just absolutely just didn't know what to do with him. And if he can kind of get a more consistent kind of output like that, I know that's an incredible kind of match, but just a little bit more, just grabbing games. There are games when we've kind of seen him, doesn't get frustrated, but he just slightly comes out of games. He'll come maybe too deep and he'll play Hollywood passes that don't really build up the actual attack. They just put the ball out wide and then he's not there to get it back in the box himself. If he can do that against Arsenal, if he can dictate the play and everything kind of goes around him, because the beauty of a player like that is he doesn't just draw one player to him. He draws 2 or 3 when he's absolutely on song. And that allows the Son and Kulusevskis to absolutely have space to revel in and punish the team. Fingers crossed, that would be amazing if he kind of turns up with that kind of performance on Saturday.
The last worry, sorry, Jamie, you're going to go for it. Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, obviously, just two final quick questions just to wrap it up. Obviously, we saw the referee appointed on the weekend. It was Anthony Taylor. Now, referee's already done one of Spurs' matches this season. It was a nice and not very controversial game. It was obviously that Chelsea game, the Battle of the Bridge. I know a lot of Arsenal fans come out and said that they weren't happy he was appointed as refs. Spurs fans the same. Do you think maybe a bit too much has kind of been made of the referee's appointment?
Oh yeah, 100%. Honestly, we do on Football.London. We always do kind of big games with like who the ref is, what he's done in the past, and all this sort of stuff. And honestly, from every referee, either team will probably think, oh, they totally hate us. Pretty much every referee's got something in their past that they've done that's upset one of the clubs. Obviously, the referee is important in the way they handle this game because there are clearly going to be some big decisions. There always are because of how fast and furious it is. But yeah, I don't think it probably mattered so much who the name was, more so that they just do their job properly on the day. And the good old VAR, I'm sure VAR will have some part to play, as it always does.
Something's going to happen.
Just one final question for me. Alasdair, have you got any information on whether Arsenal will shut this time or?
There's been no indication that there's been anything heading through the camp and causing one COVID case at all. So we're hoping, it seems to be game on.
Fantastic stuff. And there was actually points, wasn't there, about the train strikes and that sort of stuff. Well, look, we can't let any of you get away without doing predictions, and Rick would kill me if I didn't ask. So we're gonna go around. We're finished with you, Ali. So Jamie, let's stay with you. What's your quick summary on Arsenal game and what's your prediction, bud?
Look, for this one, absolutely take a draw. We mentioned our record there is pretty horrible. One win there since 2010. I think it's, we've lost 7 of our last away trips there. So I'm absolutely taking a point here. And again, I think the big thing is if we can get through going to West Ham away, going to Stamford Bridge away, and going to the Emirates away and going undefeated, I think that would be a big, obviously a big improvement on last season and would be massive for Spurs. So absolutely taking a point here. And I think it's going to be an exciting game, and I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw here. Nice.
Okay, good stuff. John, coming over to you, buddy. I know you're keen to get off to it. You've got it. What are you going for?
Me,
this fixture's horrible, isn't it, John?
This game comes down to how well William Saliba acclimatises to coming up against the proper striker in Harry Kane. He can get a lot of early praise from Arsenal fans. This will be his first real test coming up against the proper elite level centre forward who will run him into the ground. So how well he does will have a big part on the whole game. I'm hoping that Tottenham can target him and Kane can use his experience and knowledge to run the game, as you said earlier, Lee, and really put his authority over William Saliba. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in the game as well, like Jamie. I think there will definitely be goals. And if we can go there and avoid defeat and continue this unbeaten run, we'll be looking good going on up until the World Cup comes round. So, yeah, come on, you Spurs, 2-2 draw.
Nice one, buddy. Matty, the wonderful Matty Hayes. We won't talk about Doherty, but we are going to talk about the Arsenal Tottenham. So, what are you going for, bud?
Look, I don't have a good record with these games there. So that game, Alasdair, you were talking about last year, the defeat at the Emirates was on my birthday, my 21st birthday, which completely ruined it. For anyone F1 fans out there, I had to watch Lando throw away his first win as well. Look, there's nothing that Spurs fans like to do more than clutch at straws. And we haven't mentioned that we beat them in the League Cup there 6 years ago. So that's all the confidence I need to say we're going to go batter them. No, seriously, looking at the way Man United beat Arsenal, I think there is something there for the taking. And if the two gentlemen below me aren't willing to predict a victory, I'll do it, if not just for a bit of balance. So we'll get 2 in the counter. We'll beat them 2-1, and I won't have egg on my face next week.
Oh, mate, that'd be literally amazing. Like, before I come over to you, Ali, I'll just throw mine in there because actually I went for 2-2 as well, and I promise you, John, Jamie, and myself didn't confer to begin with, but I'm also going for a Desmond. But there's a little omen here for me, and the last game that I went to was a long time ago. I don't often get away tickets because of the points systems I've got, but the last time I went to the Emirates, it was a Saturday, 12:30 kickoff, and we drew 1-1. Moussa Dembele won a penalty, if you remember, for us, I think, and Kevin Rimmer scored an own goal with a header, and it was a 1-1 draw, and that's my omen. So I'm hoping that'll be the case for this one, but I'm going 2-2, so I'll take a draw. Ali, over to you, buddy. I don't know if you do predictions, but I'm sticking you on the spot. What's your feeling? What do you think is going to happen, mate?
I am rubbish at predictions. I'm so bad at them. Honestly, they pretty much always go completely the other way. I think I would have gone 1-1, and I think that's what I'll stick with. I think it will be a 1-1. And I think, like the guy said, I don't think that's a bad result. I think you take that, and it's a better result for Spurs than it is for Arsenal if they can get that. 1-1 will do, but with plenty of incident in the game.
Yeah, there's got something controversial. I think the only worry that I've got is that we absolutely mentally ruined them on that night last season for that 3-0. Our fan base was outstanding. The noise was something I've never heard before at football ground. It was just incredible, and we mentally ruined them. And I'm just worried that they're thinking that their fan base has got the bit between their teeth as well. They believe. We talk about Don't Stop Believing with Matty's sister playing on the piano. They're believing. So, I don't want to go down a 12:30 kickoff with them singing and trying to get in our heads. Don't play the occasion, Tottenham. Play the football match. And if you can't win, don't lose. And we stay intact. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you guys. Jamie, John, Matty, Alasdair, where can we find you? Where can we find you? Jamie, over to you at Daily Hotspur. Is that where your content's all going out?
That's it, yeah. On Twitter, on Daily Hotspur. So, yeah, if you want to go and follow it, then we're going to follow it. So, yeah.
Top stuff. And John, where can we find you, buddy?
Yeah, at Lilywhite Rose, you can find me, mate.
Top stuff. And John, don't forget to tune in to all of the academy and the youth of Tottenham through Lilywhite Rose. And Matty Hayes, the wonderful Matty Hayes. Where can we find you, bud?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as well, at Matt Hayes THFC. So you can either see me tweet about Richarlison all the time or videos of Lee dancing on Dancing with the Stars. But plenty of content there for everybody.
you love Richarlison, the poo 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 poo, and you're wonderful. Can't thank you enough, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you tonight. A wonderful Alasdair Gold. Where can we find you? If no one knows where to find you, then they've literally been sticking their head in the sand. But where can they find you, bud?
I'm all over the place, aren't I? Obviously, Football.London. Guesty and I with our podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, and YouTube. Yeah, I'm all over the place. So you can't get rid of me. But honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed myself.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again to Jamie, to John, to Matty, and of course, Alasdair Gold. Lee McQueen. Yes, I'm not Ricky. Ricky will be back. And actually, a lot of us will be back for the hopefully celebrating a win on Saturday. And I love saying this, but I never get to say this. So all it left me to say is look out on Saturday and come on, you Spurs.